So, good afternoon. My name is Mark Miller. I am Norwegian, but I was born in England, so if you're wondering about the name. I'm going to go through a number of slides about peer support, but I just wanted to see, with a show of hands, how many here work with peer support today? Yeah, almost half of you. Very good. So, we have an illustration here, which is essentially, we're all in the same boat. And that's part of the idea. You have to identify with the people that you're going to support, and they have to identify with you. I work for a company or an organization called Momentum. Momentum is a Norwegian organization started by Nils Odd, sitting here, in 1996. And we're an association of amputees, family members, and also institutions, all over Norway. One of the keys of Momentum is to try to be a hub of information. When you wake up in the morning the day after you've lost a leg or an arm, you may have a lot of questions. You may not even know how to ask questions. You don't know what to ask about, because your focus is about loss. You've lost something. You've lost possibly for the rest of your life, something that you value. And having somewhere to go to find experience and people who have been there before is really what it's all about. And that is me on a three-wheel electrical bike, on the right there. Peer support is probably the backbone of what we do at Momentum. It's the most valuable thing that we can give to people who have amputation and are wondering about how to master their everyday life. It's also one of the most valuable things that I can do for other people. It's volunteer work, but it pays hugely in terms of recognition and seeing other people mastering their everyday life. It's very rewarding. So if you're not doing it today, I would encourage you to do so. It's all based on volunteer work. It's an unpaid service, and I think that's very important. When we turn up at a hospital bed, they don't want to start thinking about whether or not you're paid, and that you're there for a commercial reason, and that you're only there because you earn money. The motivation that we have to go there is a genuine one, to meet another human being, to share your experiences, and try to help them to lift their eyes a bit and look beyond the current loss and look at what they potentially can do in their everyday life. We are reimbursed for travel and so on, and it may be different depending on which country you're in, but it's always worthwhile checking to see whether you can get some form of reimbursement, because Norway is a very big country, not a lot of places we need to travel, so it can be expensive. So what is peer support? Peer support is basically based around the desire or the wish for a person who has just amputated or has maybe lived with amputation for a while and not quite mastered what they want to do. And it can come in many forms. The most typical one is a one-on-one meeting, where we sit down either by the hospital bed or maybe going home to someone, and it's a very private session. If you've worked in business, we talk about one-on-ones with your manager. I don't know if you've experienced that, but the rules about one-on-ones is it's their time, it's not yours, if you're the manager. The same is true in peer support. It's their time, not yours. You're there to support. So the rules of engagement are you have to listen, and you have to answer and give relevant information. If you're doing a group session, it's slightly different. A group session like this, it's hard to have the one-on-one, needs-based, individual-based questions coming out. However, if you walk in front of the people and start showing your prosthetics, showing how they work, what a liner is, what an inner liner is, what the, the different components are. Then in group sessions, the questions start coming straight away. That you can't see something like that if you haven't experienced it. It will start and generate questions, and the right ones too. And then you can start talking about hygiene, you can start talking about different components, you can talking about the fact that there is no one solution for everybody, and that the individual has to understand their own needs and be able to communicate those. You also have the web and the internet, and I'll talk about a project we have there. Probably the most important thing we do is organize activities. And that's activities where amputees and their families can come together and spend time together. And of course what happens is they will share experience. So it's a huge peer support event no matter what you're doing. If you're doing canoeing, or if you're going walking in the forest, or fishing, or whatever, or just taking the ferry from Norway to Germany, it doesn't really matter. It'll be a good event where people can share experience. I brought some numbers. In Norway every year about 500 people are amputated, and they're amputated all over the country. We don't have a specialized area where they get amputated, so often the result is very different. But these are the numbers for the first half of this year, and the number of people we meet and the number of activities we do is increasing every year. It is more and more in demand. And I'll talk a little bit about why. What we've done is we've worked with basically three main elements. The first is the Rehabilitation Institutions. By the time you get to rehabilitation, let me talk about the normal Norwegian way of getting amputated. Okay, so if you're a diabetic like I am, you have several weeks, months, or years that you've been a patient up until the point where you're amputated. You then get amputated, and then you get sent straight into rehabilitation. Most of the patients will go straight from hospital to rehab. And then you'll be there for maybe 5 to 8 weeks. And during the 5 to 8 weeks, you will get your first prosthetic device. Okay? And then after that, you're out and basically on your own. So we have made agreements, written agreements, with the Rehabilitation Institutions, and they are largely based on group meetings. So we go there once a month, because people are there for 5 to 6 weeks, once a month, and then we do a group session. And then based on the group session, often people ask for a one-on-one to discuss their own personal issues, because they're not comfortable with talking in a large environment. And the group session could be maybe 5 people, 10 people, or it could be 1. We don't know who's going to turn up. We can't call them before and say, how many amputees do you have? Is it worthwhile coming or whatever? We always turn up, and then we talk to the people who come. The hospitals, we also have written agreements. That's with the nurses and the doctors, and there it's typically a one-on-one. It's typically during the post-operative phase, where people have done the amputation and they're lying in bed, they've lost a leg or an arm, and they're wondering about the future. And it's a huge, huge positive impact. If you have a double below the leg amputee lying in bed, maybe crying, maybe depressed, their family, their friends are all talking about phantom pain and wheelchair and not being able to walk, not being able to participate in family events, and then you walk in the door. That moment is magical. It is absolutely magical for them and for you. Because suddenly they see what they potentially can do themselves. The last piece is the limb fitting centers. So all the professionals that work helping us put on our prosthetic devices and get something valuable out of life. And you have a lot of very competent people there. And what we do is we do joint events with them where we invite amputees to come and hear about different themes. And as you can see, it could be anything like personal goal setting. How do you set goals for yourself, one step at a time, in order to do what you want to do? Or it could be about ankles and knees. You know, what's a good ankle these days? What type of materials do they use? Are they heavy? Are they light? Are they easy to walk with? Can you play golf? You know, all the questions that come up. So the strategy for peer support going on is we're trying to refurbish our training course. Currently we have a 2-day course. We're going to cut it down to 1 day. We're going to run it in probably smaller groups, and we're going to run it using experienced peer support people and new peer support people. And then we're going to continue that cooperation with a mentor role and an execution role. So if we're doing a group event, there would typically be 2 people, and hopefully you would have complementary amputations. It's really tough for me as a below-the-leg amputee to talk to someone who's above the leg amputee, above the knee amputee, or an upper arm amputee, and to have a meaningful discussion. Some things are similar, but you don't really match the requirement. So you try to match as well as you can, and you can do that better with 2 people. Continue the written agreements and the support. But the key thing we're now doing is trying to work with the orthopedic surgeons. The orthopedic surgeon in Norway, and I think many places around the world, is living a little bit in isolation. They run their own thing. And the orthopedic surgeon who cut my leg off, he was telling me all the problems I would get being a below-the-leg amputee and having a double below-the-leg, hospital illnesses, balance problems, he had a whole list of things that would probably happen to me. But I'd already done my other leg. So I told him, I do not want to be a patient at the hospital. I want to be back at work in 3 months. And so I need you to cut my leg off before the 17th of May, and I'll be back in August. And he said, ain't gonna happen. But I pushed forward, and that's what he did. And I said to him, I'll book an hour with you in 6 weeks, and I'll come back and we'll talk. And so at rehab, I got my first prosthetic device. He called out my name, and I came walking towards him in the hospital. And he was standing there looking at me, and he sort of, I didn't have any crutches, didn't have any other things, any other devices. And he's looking at me and he's saying, is this normal? And I said, yes, this is normal. If you go to the rehabilitation facility, you'll see lots of people like me walking around and basically ready to go and tackle life. And he said, well, I never see them. I only see the people who come back who have problems. So his world is problem focused. And therefore, giving advice to people about a positive outcome is not in his vocabulary. So one of the things we have to start doing is to start working across the treatment cycle for an amputee and making sure that the different professions actually talk together and work together. And we have a project in Norway now where an orthopedic surgeon is working together with an orthotist and a prosthetist prior to the amputation. And what they're doing is they're deciding what the stump should look like, what the cut should be, where it should be, and so on, so that the patient can get a prosthetic device much quicker and get up on their legs much quicker. So building communication lines between the functions, I think, is critical. Just a brief note on the organization. These are all volunteers, but what we've done is we've got about 50 peer supporters who have been certified, and we've divided them into regional offices. And the reason is that when we get requests, it comes into a central location, and then the key is to make sure that we try to match the requester to a peer supporter in terms of experience And what we're trying to do today is to not go just to age, gender, and amputation level, but also hobbies. Because if you're a farmer and you've just had an accident, you're wondering about how can I get back and do farming. And if a guy from the office turns up, doesn't quite match. But if another farmer turns up, boom, you got a great connection. Same with the fisherman, right? Same with the office guy. I want to know if I can do the things I used to do. That's the question that they have. So trying to match, the better you can match, the better the outcome, typically. By the way, those are my downhill skiing prosthetics. They're brilliant. So one of the things that we've done over the years is to develop what we call the envelope. The envelope is a set of materials that we give to the patient. When they're sitting there in the hospital bed, it's very limited how much information they can actually take in. You're usually on morphine, that's great, but you know, your ability to take in information and keep it is limited. And so giving them some written material that they can read in their own time is a good thing. If you want copies of these brochures, then give me your business card afterwards. I have them in English. Unfortunately not in Japanese, I'm sorry, but I have them in English. And they're focused on different groups. One is for the amputee, the other one is for the support group around the amputee. It's a very important support group. Wives, husbands, children, relatives, friends, all the group that surrounds you. The other is focused on training for the amputee, simple exercises to use. And then what we're trying to do now is also develop some information for the health personnel, because they also need to understand both the motivation for these meetings, but also who Momentum is and why we're doing it and all these other things. So I thought I'd just talk about this video project that we're doing. It's essentially a 3-year project, and we're going to get 12 to 14 different amputees with different levels of amputation, hopefully representing all of them. And we're going to create 3 to 4 5-minute films of each of them. So that if you start at the bottom here, you'll have one which is how do you use your prosthetic device, and you'll see them taking it off, taking it on, cleaning it, showing what they do in terms of adjustments and so on. How do they use it practically? Then from that we will cut it down to maybe a 90-second video, which is a combination of maybe 2 or 3 different people who have the same level of amputation. And then the top level will be what we call the teaser. And why are we doing this? Well, it's because if you know about the internet, your concentration span on videos, if you like it, is probably about 3 to 4 seconds. If you don't like it, you'll turn it off. After that, you may see 30 seconds. You won't see 5 minutes. So you have to get sucked in for that. But if you are an above the arm, above the elbow amputee, and you see a couple of people and you say, oh, that one was interesting, I'd like to know more, then you may watch a 90-second video, and then based on that, you may go and watch 3 5-minute videos of that person doing their activities, their hobbies, and mastering their daily life. So the idea is to create a hierarchy, and that means that we can distribute these across the internet. They're going to be text, they're going to be in English as well as Norwegian, and we're going to make them widely available. So hopefully we can start to bring the knowledge of how different people are mastering their everyday life out to a much broader population. Qualitative service is an important element. We all go through a cyclical life. We have days where things quite frankly, are not good. Wake up in the morning, you've been out doing something, you've got a sore on your leg, you can't use the prosthetic device, you're stuck in a wheelchair, life is not good. Next day, you're out, you've had a great day, fantastic experience, your devices are working well, boom, you're off. It varies, life varies. So we have to be able to say no to when we get these requests. If we're not feeling good, we shouldn't go out. And the reason is, you are a mirror when you go out. They see in you what they potentially can do. So if you're sitting in a wheelchair and they're sitting in their bed, their picture of the future will be to sit in a wheelchair. If you walk through the door, that picture will stick with them. So it's important to remember that. Being a peer supporter doesn't mean that you should always do peer support. It means you have to be in the right frame of mind, you have to be the right physical level, so that you can give this person a picture of their future. And if you can, it's magic. It is so inspiring. One of the key things going forward in order to improve quality is to match experienced peer supporters with people who are just starting. It's quite daunting going out to a group of people who are all new amputees and have 100 questions about their different lives and holding a presentation for them. But if you're with someone who's done it before, you learn and you pick up and you see it's not very dangerous and yep, I can do this. And over time, you become confident enough to do it yourself. But giving you that little support in the beginning will probably help more people become confident peer supporters than if you let them out on their own and see how it goes. Reporting is important, and the reason it's important is because that's where we get funded from the state government. So having a system which makes it easier to register the meetings and make sure that that's taken care of, that means we also get funds into the volunteer organization. And good ideas are always welcome. You know, we're always improving. Every one of us, every day. And the reason I'm here is because you guys have tons of really good ideas. Walking around in the exhibition hall, and you can learn so much. And from different countries, different situations, different ways of doing things, it's brilliant. So, so I'm a sponge. I love this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that very detailed and inspiring presentation. I was wondering if we have any questions for Mark or comments. No? Oh yes, yes. Please, could you use the microphone for the translators so that the people from Japan can speak in Japanese?
Hello, my name is Rick van Ingen. I'm a rehabilitation doctor in the Netherlands. And are you paid by the government?
Only reimbursed in terms of expenses. So it's not a government organization, it's a volunteer organization. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Dieter will probably talk about the German organization.
Another question?
Oh, sorry.
One more question. I'm also a rehabilitation physician from the Netherlands,
Yeah.
but I work only with children, and children with limb deficiencies, so they were born with their limb deformity, and we do amputations on them, so we're very early on. Do you see these limb deficient persons also in your peer support group? Because in the Netherlands, they don't want to be involved too much in the larger group of older amputees.
We have a similar organization in Norway, and they do also have peer support. I don't know how much it's used, but I know it is used.
Yeah, but it's a different group. It's not in the same group that you are.
No, but we've talked about merging the organizations. So in fact, we're working on that at the moment because we have some of the common needs in terms of doing things, and being a larger organization helps.
Yeah,
but
we have just done the same in the Netherlands with these two groups.
And I think the need for the children may be even stronger than the need as you grow older. They have so many questions. They have so many things they want to ask about. Yeah. And having role models is so important for them. Yeah.
One short question, what is the training about? What do you do in the training for peer supporters?
The training is about a couple of things. The first is to teach people about the rules of a peer support conversation, which is typically about confidentiality. That's probably the most important rule, is that the confidentiality bounds of a conversation are absolute. There is no, you don't leak information from a conversation you've had. The other is more techniques. It's about how to listen, ask open questions, how to sit and be quiet and let people think, reflect, talk, how to get a discussion started when it's really tough and people are depressed and won't look you in the eye, and how do you get out of those situations? How do you try to cultivate and show more empathy, not sympathy, right? Two different things. Try to help them understand that you're there to help them look beyond the current loss. So a lot of technique, but also trying to help build confidence in what they want to do.
Who does provide the training?
We do. Yeah, the experienced peer support. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to the next speaker. So thank you very much for the